Absolutely senseless and horrific acts of violence. And all Nicolae Miu had to do was walk away. All he had to do was walk away. That's what you've seen in this case. You saw he told Lieutenant Hart, "They told me I can't run away." Obviously not true. Think about the result of his actions. Everything you've seen in this trial, the horrific injuries, the death of Isaac. Why didn't he just walk away? His only explanation when testifying was, "I stood my ground. I stood my ground." First of all, Wisconsin is not a stand your ground state.
Objection.
Overruled.
I'll talk about that specifically from your jury instructions. Second, that's not true, as I'll show you. He didn't just stand his ground. I'm not going to defend the actions of the boys who testified. It was cruel what they were calling Nicolae. They shouldn't have been mocking him, calling him predator, raper. But their conduct did not justify what Nicolae did. You heard from Alina, Isaac's mother, about her son Isaac. He was 17 years old when he was killed. He enjoyed golfing, spending time with friends. He recently started a new business, detailing cars. He was an honor student looking forward to going to college. His death was senseless. One of the things defense said in the beginning of trial in their opening was they're glad there's a video. So are we. Without the video, Nicolae would have slipped away. The only reason he was apprehended was because law enforcement had that screenshot of him. The video doesn't fade with time. It's not biased, not influenced by alcohol. As I told you in the beginning of this case, the violent episode from the video is about 25 seconds, from the point he punches Madison until you see him walking off after stabbing 5 people. He's not seen, Nicolae is not seen in that video for 8 to 9 seconds until the point you see him walking away. You don't see him stab Dante. Some of you may have wondered why we called Larian Davis. Certainly it wasn't for his eyewitness testimony, but he took a video. He took a video that captured a different angle than Juwan's video. It's grainy, it's difficult to see, but you can see enough. And it shows Nicolae seeking Dante out and stabbing him when his group is in the opposite direction. I'm going to show that again. So, a few things to note. There's nothing between Nicolae and Larian. He's not surrounded. His friend Ariel is there at this point. There's nothing to the left and behind Nicolae, except his group in the distance that you can't see on video. He walks away from those directions towards a group of people and stabs Dante in the chest, not standing his ground. He's seeking out Dante. That's retribution, not self-defense. Another one I submit to you is an exception that acted admirably is Isaac. His death was tragic and horrific. This is what you see of Isaac in the video. On the left, he's standing next to his tube, not moving away from his tube. He's pointing at Nicolae to leave. In the middle, when Nicolae turns back to Isaac, Isaac puts his hands up, fingers splayed. The only other thing you see of Isaac is him standing in the background. When the other boys are mocking, calling names to Nicolae, Isaac is just standing in the background. He's not saying anything, he's not doing anything, he's not jeering. He's just standing there holding their tubes. Defense accused the state in openings of being selective in the photos we used, the frames, to try to show a certain narrative about Nicolae smiling. As you've seen, he's smiling a lot in the video. But defense is actually doing that when it comes to Isaac. Nicolae never said anything about being choked, never said anything about pain on his neck. Even when specifically asked by the start nurse, never mentions anything. And the video doesn't lie. So on the left, Nicolae has just stabbed Riley, who you heard from multiple witnesses were just standing there. Tony comes to try to break it up. Nicolae stabs him twice. Isaac, just off frame, I submit to you, he just saw Nicolae stab those two people completely unprovoked. Although he was in the background the whole time, not doing anything, he came to their aid. And he pushes Nicolae. You can clearly see it's a push. He has one hand on the arm, other hand on the chest. It's Nicolae's own action of thrusting the knife into Isaac's heart that moves Isaac's hands. You can even see from the release, it's a push. He's not sitting there left holding his hands out in a choking motion. Can we take the screen down?
Yes.
I'm going to show you the video so you can see it's obviously a push. Even if it was a strangulation, which it clearly isn't, Isaac was justified in using any level of force. He just saw Nicolae stab two people who posed no threat to Nicolae. They're not in his face. You can see in the images, they're standing close. They're not in his face. They're not shaking their fists at him. They're not even sticking their fingers in his face. They're standing close to him, touching his shoulders, pointing, yelling at him to leave. What about Nicolae, 52 years old, apparently sober, according to, I think, what defense will argue. He didn't have any signs of intoxication when law enforcement made contact with him, but he certainly made a point of telling Lieutenant Hart multiple times how much he was boozing and drinking on the river. He can't let it go that he was insulted. So much so that as the boys are tubing away from him, all Nicolae has to do is stand there. He doesn't even have to take a step back. He just has to stand there, let the boys continue tubing. They're down in their tubes. He starts walking up to them, touches his knife, and then runs up to them. You heard Nicolae's ridiculous description or explanation for why he ran up on the boys. Because one was holding a phone, he thought it was Ariel's phone. You also heard Nicolae had to concede, had to admit that pretty much everyone on the river had those phone cases. They wanted to elicit evidence that Nicolae is feeble. Sandy, he wasn't feeble according to Sandy. He had a surgery a couple years ago, recovered in a few weeks. Maybe things took him a little longer than they did before. He wasn't feeble according to Ernesto. You heard Ernesto, when he was being asked about the stabbing, said, he's a big guy, he was in the army, he doesn't need a knife to defend himself. He didn't say, oh, he's this fragile old guy. He's clearly not feeble, as you see in the video. He runs up on these boys in the water. He leaves behind devastating, devastating injuries. Slices clean through two of Isaac's ribs. The very first thing he does is walk away. Doesn't run. Doesn't tell Ariel or Ernesto anything. Doesn't tell them to run. He walks away from his group to the other side of the river. At some point rinses the knife because it wasn't covered in blood. Throws the knife onto the bank before walking back to his group. Says nothing to his group other than they took my knife. Puts on his hat, sunglasses, and shirt, and sits down in his tube. He's the one, as he said in his interview, says, let's go, let's get out of here. They can't right away because Eric isn't there. You saw, and as they're tubing down the river, you saw the video of him casually paddling along. You saw, so plan one, get away. Slink away with the crowd. That didn't work. Plan two, play dumb. He could have just walked away. He could have just raised his knife. He didn't do any of that. He just stood there with the knife until he punched Madison. He touched his knife when running up on before running up on the boys. He takes out the knife, opens the blade up, never says anything, never walks away, never takes a step back, never raises the knife, never yells for help. He's smirking with the knife in his hand. Finally, after stabbing 5 people, then he walks away. Doesn't run, walks. It's shocking to see what Nicolae did in this case, to see the injuries, and then see his calm, cool demeanor after the fact, tubing down the river, sitting in his tube at the scene with chaos, casually talking to Sheriff Knudsen, making up this huge lie to Lieutenant Hart. He even lied to the SART nurse at 9 p.m., so 5 hours after the incident, about Boy pulling a knife, twisting his arm, poking him with his own knife. He even lied to Sandy after the arrest. Nick recognizes that what happened is not justified self-defense. Just standing there with the knife, not walking away when you clearly can. So even to Sandy, after he's charged, he casts blame on her and the group for not hearing him yelling. He never yelled. Normally it'd be difficult to know what a defendant believed in a self-defense case, not in this case. Nicolae was not in fear, he snapped. He was angry and he snapped, and he knew it. His actions show he knew he did not reasonably believe the amount of force was necessary. He was not actually in fear. If he was actually in fear, he would have left. How else? Do you know what other clues? Think about his testimony. We submit to you that this is first-degree intentional homicide and first-degree attempted homicide. His acts clearly show intent. But if you can't agree unanimously on that, as your jury instructions tell you, you have to consider second degree. Again, the difference in second degree is Nicolae's belief versus reasonable person. Here you know, I submit to you, his belief from his own conduct. Afterwards, he knew it was not justified. If you can't agree on second degree, you consider first degree reckless homicide, first degree reckless endanger of safety. Element 1, Nicolae endangered the safety of another human being. That's obvious. Endangered the safety of another by criminally reckless conduct. Your jury instructions define criminally reckless conduct, creating a risk of death or great bodily harm. It's unreasonable and substantial. He was aware of the risk. Again, obvious when he's stabbing people. When you talk about reckless conduct, let's say you believe his testimony that he just thought anyone touching him, anyone close to him was attacking him and stabbing him. That's reckless. That's criminally reckless conduct. That's utter disregard for human life. What other clues are there to utter disregard? He just walks away. He just walks away. He doesn't call 911. He just sits on his tube as other people are helping the victims, and he tubes down the river. Your jury instructions talk about the question, the special question, yes or no. Did he commit these crimes while possessing a dangerous weapon, the pocket knife? There's nothing inherently wrong with carrying a pocket knife. A lot of people carry pocket knives. Totally fine to carry it as a tool, totally fine to carry it for self-defense, totally fine to carry any legal weapon, firearm, knife, if it's used legally. Nicolae he was not justified in self-defense when he attacked these people. So we'd ask that you answer yes on that question. In the end, what is beyond clear, Nicolae knew this was not self-defense. All of his actions, from the minute the stabbings are done, from the second the stabbings are done, he knew it. It's obvious. His actions were horrific. They were senseless. He killed Isaac Schuman, stabbed him directly in the heart, disemboweled AJ, stabbed Tony who's trying to break up a fight, Riley who's just standing there. and then walks up to Dante. That walking up to Dante, stabbing him when he's got clear path to retreat, that destroys any argument that this was self-defense. He was angry. There's no rational reason Nicolae, his group's over here, would walk this way towards the group of people to stab Dante. Senseless and horrific acts. The state has to find Nicolae Miu guilty of all charges. Thank you.